So guys, in this video, I will illustrate your mesh analysis. So what is the difference of your mesh and your nodal? Your nodal is that you will use your KCL purely. And then, next is your mesh analysis. When you are talking about mesh analysis, you are using your KVL or your Kirchhoff's voltage law. But we will also analyze it with your KCL, your Kirchhoff's current law, in order to solve the circuits that are in or that contains into meshes. So I will illustrate this one. So as you can see, there are two meshes. These are your mesh 1 and your mesh 2. Always consider that if the number of equations to be constructed will be equal to the number of meshes. So if there are two meshes found in the circuit, therefore we will construct two equations. Okay? So let's start. The first thing to do is that in order for you to have a great flow of solving, so let us establish your current. So I will establish this as my I1 and my I2. Take note that if you are using your KCL, it is very uh, suggestible that you should have a node. So this will be your node A or V3. Why V3? Because this is your voltage at V3. Okay, from V3 to ground. And then we have our I3. Okay, that's our established voltages. So next step is that we will we will illustrate what is your I3. So your I3 basically is your I3. Let us relate your I3 with I1 and I2. So your I3 at node V3, we have at node V3, I3 is equal to our I1 minus I2. So bakit I1 minus I2? So we have, take note of the law of our KCL. Pag pumasok sa node, positive. Pumasok yung sa node yung I1 natin. That is positive. Lumabas sa node yung I2, negative I2. And then lumabas sa node yung I3, negative I3. Take note that KCL is the summation of your current equals 0. Solving for your I3, we have a value equal to I1 minus I2. That is our I3. Next step is to use our KVL. So KVL tayo. So KVL, let's say at loop, let's say A, B, C, D, A, B, C, D. At loop A, B, D, we have pumasok sa negative ng V1. This is our KVL, right? KVL at loop 1. KVL at loop 1. Okay. KVL tayo sa loop 1. So, this is my loop 1. Alright? So, we have, pumasok tayo sa negative V1. Tama? We have our negative V1. And then, lagi kong sinasabi sa inyo guys, if there is no voltages or plurality of voltage that is established in a resistor, always assume na pumapasok siya sa positive. Okay? As long as your I1 is with the flow of your loop current. So we have R1 or your V1, negative V1 plus your R1 multiplied by your I1. This is Ohm's law. So R1 multiplied by R1 multiplied by I1, that is your V1 prime. You see V11, V1 prime or your VR1. Okay, para hindi kayo malito, lalagay muna natin tong VR1. VR1. And then our VR3. Okay? And then plus, papasok tayo sa VR3 mo. Plus VR3. Equals 0. Because the summation of V in Vm is equal to 0 in our KVL. So what is your V3? So we have negative V1 plus R1 I1. This is actually your VR3. R1 I1 plus our VR3, which is your, ano yung current na mapasok sa R3 natin? Ito, di ba? Our I3. Okay, we have VR3 is equal to I3 multiplied by our R3 equals 0. But what is our V1? So we may solve it as V1, given actually yung V1 natin. So, wag muna natin galawin yan. So, ano next na gagawin natin? I-indicate natin yung value ng I3 natin. But what is our I3? So, paano natin solve yung I3 natin? Take note that our I3 is illustrated a while ago. Wherein, your I3 is equal to I1 minus I2. Alright? So, that is our I3. So, we have V1, transpose ko na siya sa kabila, which is equal to R1 multiplied by I1 plus your I3, which is related into I1 minus I2 multiplied by our R3 equals, walang 0 kasi transpose na natin siya. Okay, so this will be your equation number 1. Okay, that is our equation number 1. Okay, but this is already our first equation. But the problem is that yung kinukuha natin is your I1 and I2. Therefore, we would relate it into I1 and I2 para makakuha tayo ng two variables, two unknowns. Okay? We have our V1 is equal to R1 multiplied by I1 plus R3 multiplied by I1 minus R3 multiplied by I2. Okay? So, ang gagawin natin is that we will group all the variables with I1. So, we have R1 plus R3 factoring out your I1 minus R3 I2. This will be our equation 1. That will be used in manipulation or getting the value of your I1 and I2. Okay? So, we have our equation 1. So, how will solve for our equation 2? So, our equation 2 will be solved by having a KVL at loop 2. So, we have our KVL at loop 2. Take note, guys, that your V, okay, KVL at loop 2, KVL at loop 2. Mapapansin nyo na yung direction ng current ng I3 nyo is salungat sa direction ng KVL natin. Okay? So, what I have been telling you since our third module is that pag sumalungat or bumaliktad yung current sa established current mo sa nodal, therefore, gagawin mo siyang negative. Okay? Gagawin mong negative yung current na makukuha mo dito. Okay? So, let's start. We have our R3. Okay, R3. Or I2 muna. Yung V2 natin, yung I2 natin, pumasok sa V2. So, let us consider it as positive V2. Okay? Pumasok sa positive V2. And then, pumasok siya sa R3. But take note, salungat yung current mo sa I3. Okay? So, we have plus V plus I3 prime multiplied by R3 plus your R2 multiplied by I2. Pumasok, hindi walang given, pero take note na with the flow siya ng current. So, therefore, positive yan. R2, I2. R2, I2. But what is your I3 prime? As I have said, your I3 prime, yan yung current na sumalungat. Or the current in your loop na sumalungat, established current natin sa I3. Which is equal, so therefore, I will say that your I3 prime is equal to negative I3. Okay? So therefore, we have V2 plus negative I3 multiplied by R3. Okay? Plus R2 I2 equals 0 from KVL. Okay? So we have V2 minus I3 R3 plus R2 I2 equals 0. But what is your I3? I3, take note that your I3 is equal to I1 minus I2. Okay? So therefore, I may say that since V2 is equal to, so transpose ko na siya, I3 R3 minus R2 I2. Take note that your I3 is equal to I1 minus I2. So we have I1 minus I2 multiplied by R3 minus R2 I2. So we have R3 I1. Okay. R3 I1. So negative yan minus R2 I2. Okay. So therefore, we have R3 I1 minus R2 I2 minus I2 R3. Okay. Okay. So R3 I1 minus R2 minus I2 R3. Okay? So, ano next na gagawin natin? So, ito, establish natin to. Yung lahat ng I2 together, I1 together. Mapapansin niyo that your V2 is equal to R3 I1 minus R2 I2 minus I2 R3, or it is equal to R3 I1 minus I2 multiplied by R2 plus R3. Okay. Para makuha nyo yung special technique ko later on is that gagawin nating negative to. So we will multiply both sides by negative 1. We have negative V2 equals negative R3I1 plus I2 R2 plus R3. So therefore, your V2, negative V2 is equal to this equation. Negative R3 I1 plus I2 multiplied by R2 plus R3. Ayan. So this will be our equation 2. This will be our equation 2. Okay? So, paano natin i-solve yan? So, madali lang, di ba? By circuit analysis o by mathematical analysis. Like solving for 2 equations to unknowns, pwede kayo mag-substitute, pwede kayo mag-cancellation. Okay? But if you will use your matrix, so siguraduhan nyo lang that you have your I1, I2, and then your voltages. So matrix later on, you will see that you will have your I1 be equal to, so lahat ng I1 nyo at equation 1, equation 2, our equation 1 we have R1 plus R3. Our equation 3 we have negative R3. And then our I2 we have negative R3 and R1 plus R3 equals your voltages. At equation 1 we have V1 and equation 2 we have negative V2. Okay, so V1 and negative V2. Okay, yan, this is your matrix form. Ayan. So, ano yung sinasabi special technique kanina? Ganito lang yan, guys. Mapansin mo na pag yung current mo is, yung resistor mo is with the other branch, magiging negative lang siya, di ba? So, ganito lang yan. So, pag nag-loop ako dito, lahat na nakakonekta dito, kung ano yung I1 ko, I1, multiplied by, lahat na nakakonekta sa I1 ko, R1 plus R3. Tama? And then, minus V1. Minus kung ano yung nakasalungat or kung ano yung resistor na nakakonekta sa kabila. Okay? Ima-minus mo siya agad dyan. Minus I2 R3 plus negative V1. Or you have V1 is equal to I1 multiplied by R1 R3. R1 plus R3 minus I2 R3. Okay, sa kabila naman. Ano yung mga resistor na nakakonect dito? So, pag nag-loop ako dito, we have R2 plus R3, tama? Yun yung resistor na nakakonect dyan. So, R2 plus R3 multiplied by anong mesh yan? We have our mesh 2, right? Mesh 2 multiplied by I2. Anong value ng nasa kabilang mesh? We have our resistor R3. So, magiging negative yan. Negative. Yung ano yung mesh ng kabila? I1 multiplied by R3 plus V2. So, siyempre, equal 0 yan. Kasi pumasok sa positive V2, tama ba? So, we have negative V2 is equal to R2 plus R3 multiplied by I2 plus our V2 or plus our minus our I1 R3. Okay, ganoon lang yan. So, yun yung question, guys. So, pag wala, thank you. Siyempre, meron yan, no? Pag meron kayong tanong, just message me on my messenger or comment your questions below. So, maraming salamat and good morning.